Is it already live?
Live.
Mic come करे?
हाँ जी हाँ जी.
Hello, hello. Yeah.
ठीक है.
लाइव चल रहा है. जेनु मूव करना तो कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. मैं शेयर कर दूँगा. तो जान लगे मैं ग्रुप में चुका रहा था. कौन पर्सनल पे था? एक
No. I think I might do this.
734 787 649 734 787 6495.
के नाम
ये नाम है अर्श. Yeah. You want to start?
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to keep my remarks really brief because we heard kind of in the Divan Hall what today is all about, but we are talking about domestic violence and substance abuse, and we have some incredible guests here with us today. It's not every day that we get to hear from people who work in law enforcement, who work in the court system, to see what the process is like, not only after a DUI or after an arrest, but how we can work together to prevent any of this from happening in the first place. I'll quickly introduce all four of our guests, and then we can hear from them. First, I'd like to introduce Chief Chad Baugh with Canton PD. This is a remarkable person, and I will introduce him in just a second, but this is the chief. We have 35th District Judge Jim Plackus with us today, as well as the clerk for Canton Township, Michael Segrist, and Anne-Marie Graham-Hudak, the Township Supervisor as well. So thank you all for being here. I do want to quickly just introduce the chief before he speaks. His law enforcement career has spanned 28 years, and he served as Deputy Director, Police Lieutenant, Sergeant, Undercover Detective, just to name a few. And he created an embedded police clinician program connecting community members to vital resources, and he also created a juvenile diversion program and a constitutional and holistic policing model. And I say all of that to say this is somebody who's really passionate about trying to get to the root of the problem, trying to make connections before we end up in the criminal justice system. So if you would, I am so honored to introduce my friend, Chief Chad Baugh.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go out of the room here. I appreciate it. I wrote some notes here, but the reality is we're trying to break down some of the barriers between your government, your police department, all the things that we know that have been hurdles in the past, especially around stigma, alcoholism, and some of the crisis that results from alcoholism, which we find in the family home. So when we say domestic violence, I think it's important that you understand your government's not here to jump into your household and tell you how to live, but we're here as a resource. We have the ability to connect folks that are in crisis with a great number of resources. As I enter, I think next month I'll start my 30th year in this type of work, and what I've seen over the years is incredible stories within your culture, the Sikh culture that have built a good portion of our community. And one thing I have noticed though is it seems like a higher stigma within your family and your friends about addressing these issues. And what we want to do is just talk about some of these incredible stories that the clerk can bring, that the township supervisor can bring, and our chief judge for the 35th District Court, and what he has seen in him processing some of the cases that had to go through our police department because there was an early intervention. It's very commendable that you have the courage to break down some of these laws. I know when I spoke to Priya and Jaspreet over the last year about starting this conversation, how do we break through? Because it's real hard for me as a police chief to come in and say, hey, you have an alcoholism problem. You have a domestic violence problem in your culture. I think it's the responsibility though to have that conversation, to to have the courage to bring it up. And that's what you're doing by bringing folks like us in. We have folks that can break down some of those barriers, maybe explain their stories. We have people that work within our police department that can navigate the many different complexities and the nuances of the insurance. They're just trying to get folks into rehab. The reason I say rehab, because most of us here are not in the great position to counsel folks, but we can make those connections. The one thing I have noticed is some of the root cause. We'd like to do root cause analysis. They give us this position, they give us this badge to help resolve problems. We don't always have to resolve problems through the court system, but the judge can explain how he does that and his goals, because it's not about generating anything but good outcomes for our community. So internally in the police department, what we have seen, like I said, in the sick culture is very high BACs. When BACs mean blood alcohol content, once the disease has really become advanced. And what we find when we start speaking and talking with folks in the family, that this has been going on for a long time. And then we start talking to some of the men I've spoken to about their issues. They've spoken about how liquor and alcohol is attached to status within their job capacity. The higher they go sometimes within their job capacity, alcoholism tends to advance a little bit. So we want to try to find ways to remove the stigma, connect you with folks within our organization, connect you with folks outside our organization. Now, we have resources that almost are unlimited. It's just because folks work with us and they want to solve problems. The face of policing isn't what it was 30 years ago. We want to solve problems within our community. I do have we have a compelling story here when the clerk talks about the processes he's went through in his life. And I'd like to have the judge speak to some of the things he's seen on his end. And we have a good personal story from the township supervisor about how things have happened in her life and how it's been affected by drug and alcohol abuse. And one thing, I just want to open that line of communication. This is a long-term relationship. We're going to be here together for many years. We're friends. We all live here together in Plymouth and Canton. And we're your partner. We are your government working with you. You can always contact me. I'm on the website. I can connect you with services. I am not going to judge. I have these situations in my family also, and with that we can solve these problems.
Okay.
You good?
Okay. I'll try.
So with that, before I move on to our next speaker, do you have any questions or any thoughts or any concerns that I could address? Feel free to open up. This is what this is about, us talking together about some of the concerns in your community. Please, if you would.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing those resources with our community? You said there are unlimited resources for us to refer people to seek help.
Yes, exactly. That's the goal of this conversation today, is connect with me. I will connect you with our police clinician. We'll run the gamut and find the proper resource that matches the situation that we're dealing with. We want to address these issues before they become a court issue. And even if they become a court issue, if someone's arrested, because we have to make arrests sometimes, we will find a way within the court process to help resolve the problem. But we have to remember the onus, the responsibility is on the individuals that have this issue.
So can I just say in Punjabi in case, so what Canton Police Chief कह रहे हैं कि अपनी community जिस तरह पैसा या title या status वधदा है ये problem थोड़ी वधदी है पहली गल दूसरी गल कि उन्होंने ये भी किया कि अपनी जिहड़ी tendency है मेरे experience तो उन्होंने ये कह रहे हैं कि ਆਪਾਂ solve करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि ਆਪਾਂ solve नहीं कर सकते पर ਆਪਾਂ resources मुहैया करवा सकते हैं राइट एक गल ते दूसरी गल कि when I was talking to Chad, ek keh rahe CK, there is insurance coverage, right? You spoke about, maybe tell them about that.
Oftentimes there's insurance coverage. There's resources out there that is free depending on your scenario, your situation. The folks that work with us and for us have ways to use their knowledge to help you. That's one of the biggest problems that we found. Our police clinician who works inside our building, she spends a lot of time just navigating all those systems. And in this country, it's very challenging, probably like many other countries. But the goal, especially in crisis, is to get help and resolve the issue at hand, or try to resolve. And if you spend a lot of time just trying to navigate through the different insurance programs, you could be a little bit defeated. So we have Kristen Farmer, who's on our staff, that can help with that.
There's a question.
Hello, Chief Chair. Would you please share with us, the numbers? Are you finding a large percentage in our Indian community that they are into the alcoholism, or are you finding them?
Anecdotally, I can say that I think this problem is mostly hidden based on what I've seen personally through friendships and stuff. It seems like alcoholism is pretty prevalent, and but that's a bias, maybe a perception that I have with some of my friends that are sick. I will say once they're introduced in the criminal justice system, when a sick member is introduced, the man I've found in my experience, their BACs, which is their blood alcohol content, is extremely high. A lot of folks that go to jail, and the judge could probably speak to this, their blood alcohols are probably in the 0.12, 0.15 area. We see a lot of men, 45 years old with a 0.3 plus, which is deadly. They don't even come to our cell, they go to the hospital because of the BAC is so high.
Yep.
I think
Thank you for being here. I'm just curious, if somebody was to reach out to you for help, does that become a part of a permanent record? How is their confidentiality maintained?
I would say if you email me directly, you're probably subject to like a FOIA, like someone could actually look into my emails because I'm a police chief. But once it goes to our police clinician, however you're treated or helped, that's protected. Actually, the clerk could probably speak to FOIA better than I could, but that communication would be just through an email, or you can call my desk line, and I'd be more than happy to connect you that way.
So if, down the road they were to be in a situation where they're in front of the judge, does that kind of come into,
That's a great question. There would be no police report. That wouldn't be part of what we would call a discovery process. We protect that information through a police clinician. We wouldn't want to use that against anyone or even try to find it. So we've tried to silo the information in the police clinician files. The police department's not connected to her files, so I don't know if that helps answer the question. But because we're the government, we are subject to FOIA, so there would have to be some exploration. But from my experience, you're not going to release someone's medical files, and this is considered a medical issue.
What do you think we can do as a community, working with law enforcement, working with our judges, elected leaders, to try and combat the issue of substance abuse, i.e. alcoholism, and domestic violence, two issues that have a lot of shame and stigma that we don't talk about in our communities? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, we haven't solved this in the country, right? So I would suggest that what I've seen, what could work here, in my opinion, would you start with an AA group that's inside this building, or a version of a group, a social setting for folks that are struggling, to have that communication piece, to have someone that can help them through a sponsor. I would ask that everyone here consider the elders in the building. Elders tend to lead the ship, right? They can help folks overcome crisis. They can help folks see the end goal. And if the elders are speaking about this topic, you're going to see those who follow follow their messaging. So.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Ball. I have a question which may not be in the scope of the topic today, but it's relevant. It's to teenagers, substance abuse, right? So many times the management itself, parents start handling it themselves, and they're not able to. What's the starting point? Should we approach a PCP, or should we approach you guys to sort of, get help with that?
I think there's a joint effort. I think he actually brought up a good point that I failed to mention.
There's a chair here.
There's groups that we work with, GrowthWorks, that actually just work just like an AA group where folks come together and speak through group therapy and such. But one thing you just brought up is our children and your children. When they see alcoholism in the home and domestic violence in the home, that's a version of trauma that they have to deal with. So that cycle gets repeated. And so without treatment or without change, that cycle is going to continually repeat, and someone's going to be in front of you 30 years from now having the same conversation.
Did you have a question?
Excuse me.
Hi.
Oh boy. You have any groups which you suspect and you keep those groups under surveillance to see that this group may not today, but tomorrow or day after tomorrow may cause problems?
No, we certainly never surveil people that are struggling with substance abuse. We surveil those that are committing crime. Crimes like property crimes or violent crimes. Those are just struggling with substance abuse or alcoholism. We do not surveil. In a domestic violence situation, if there's a stalking event or there's some type of stalking issue where we expect violence, we'll definitely surveil that person and make the arrest.
The reason I'm saying, since there's a family, and that family is pretty radical family, and chances are their kids go to school and there could be bullies, and nothing can be done till they take some action. But that being bully is a reflection of the family they live in. So I'm just saying, this is a potential of a problem. That's
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's important that our school counselors, when you talk about partnerships with the school campus, are critical to that, to understand trauma, to understand root cause analysis, and bring forth solutions that way, and not be afraid to talk about it. Maybe someone in the home can bring that to light, maybe through some type of communication to the school counselors, because it's not really best situated for the police to handle these matters, but we find a way. That's kind of our motto in our Canton Police Department, is find a way and at least get it through the door of the proper resource. Hi.
I have a very basic question, jumping to domestic violence and domestic abuse. What resources are there, short of the spouse calling 911? Is there anything preemptively we can tell them, who can they reach out to?
Yeah, right. There's a couple resources immediately that I think of. It's our police clinician. She has a lot of connectivity to counselors and social workers that can help. There's also a nonprofit called First Step in the region. They help primarily women, but men and women that are victims of domestic violence.
First Step?
Yeah, First Step.
And Maya Family Services.
Maya Family Services are actually more focused for your community. Yeah. And I know one thing, the judges here too, is probation department would be more than happy to maybe answer the phone and pass along phone numbers that they work with too. And there's two sides of domestic violence. There's actually the side of the defendant, the person that's causing the violence, and they need assistance too. Any more questions? I'd like to get the clerk up here to explain maybe his perception of what we're doing here today.
Do you want to do that?
I had one idea or something that I wanted to throw out. I think it'll be maybe you already have some resources like that that you could share with the community or the Gurdwara, where you can try to quantify. So, you know, 1 beer, 2 beers equates to this much of the blood alcohol content. I know you guys do that because of, but something like that we could share in the you know, in the community, so people can kind of relate to that. Okay, I've had 2 drinks, that means I shouldn't be driving, or I shouldn't be doing this. That was just not from the abuse perspective, but from the DUI or driving under influence.
It'd be hard to specify exactly because it depends on the amount of alcohol, the type of alcohol, the time,
the BMI and stuff.
Yeah, BMI, the time and duration, the way the body processes, the way how healthy the liver is, all those types of things. But I can tell you one thing: there's not too many people I arrested years ago when I used to arrest people that said they had 2 drinks. That had 2 drinks. So, but the judge gets to hear this testimony quite often, and I don't think you'll be able to get him to stick to any 2 drinks. But if you had a drink or 2 within a couple of hours, I think you're probably going to be okay. But your body may not be able to process it, and it could affect people different. There's different things going on in the world too. That the prescription medication makes it so much more complex. I don't know how prevalent marijuana would be in this group, but that you're just combining a lot of different substances together right now in our southeast Michigan, which is causing some driving problems.
I think typically marijuana wasn't a big part, but maybe now with the vaping and other things that are coming up, it's getting there. So somebody talked about teenagers, and I think it's probably getting in the weeds now.
Yeah, one of the things that we're most concerned about with the marijuana is we had a meeting maybe last week, and we had representatives from GrowthWorks there. And one of the requirements of the children going through GrowthWorks is for them to be drug screened. And during that drug screening, they're seeing opiates show up in their blood. And I'd be surprised that they're taking opiates or heroin directly. I would imagine it's being laced inside the marijuana that they're vaping. So.
Talking on those lines, I'm a physician myself, so we see a lot of stuff coming to the ER from US side. Talking on these lines, so the level of drinking 1 or 2 beers does not relate to, it depends upon genetics, it depends upon the makeup, how healthy their liver are, and the fact that somebody's chronic drinker, he'll be able to tolerate 6 packs without you noticing anything on him, but you check the level is pretty high. So those are the factors with 1 beer or 2 beer may not equate to the blood alcohol level itself.
Right.
That's the reason there is no clear answer to the somebody who doesn't drink 1 beer may just, he probably can't drive, you know.
Right,
you can
right.
see like
Exactly.
those things blur the picture.
But there are guidelines. I mean, if the Gurdwara would be willing to put up, we can get the right information in a poster format. But actually, as a guide, it will vary from person to person. But
kind of generic, generalized.
There are.
Well, I mean, I think the thing that I wanted to add, that I had a conversation with Chief Paul. Then I spoke to somebody from Canton Gurdwara. And he said, same thing. Look at this, right? When did we speak to Chief Paul? I think June, July. Priya and I did have a conversation, sat down. And Manmohan Paji, he operates in Canton Gurdwara. He said Chief Paul said the same thing. So 0.08 is the level. And I know, I'll admit, luckily with God's grace, I was able to quit drinking 5 years ago. But when I was drinking, the measure or thereof is very subjective. In our community, like Chief is saying, drink has become a big part of the celebration and the higher up in social circle. So the idea that, I know I have this conversation with both my kids, and I often tell them, here's my American Express, just never drink drive, even if you had 1 drink, because God forbid, even if 1 drink, they get into an accident, even if it's not their fault, something is in the system, right? The roads are today more hazardous than they've ever been before. So I think it's a great thing, because his comments to him were exactly the same that his comments were to me. So I think if if committee members are here and they think about something to put out there, we should.
But if I can just piggyback off that, I think getting hung up on the 0.08 and how many drinks defeats the purpose. If they're pulling over Apne Bande who have a 0.3, we have a problem that is far more than 1 or 2 drinks. And that's what we need to address. The systemic issues that continue to plague our community. And I know this is across the board, but I care so much about our community. And I think that, yes, we can talk about 0.08, but there's a systemic issue here that we're not addressing, that alcohol has to be such a big part of our culture. Even look at what is the Punjabi festival that happens in Canton? Okay, we all know what happens in the parking lot. That's not normal. That's not normal behavior. That's not normal drinking behavior. But in our culture, we've normalized it. And as the chief mentioned, when our elders start talking about it, when we start leading by example, by not drinking or by talking, being saying that there's no shame or stigma, let's talk about this, that's where change can happen. And that's what we're hoping these conversations here can lead to something like that. And as the chief mentioned, Alcoholics Anonymous, they operate in churches. And why not have it in a gurdwara?
Yeah.
Why not have a place where we can go and talk about our issues? If we look at the Islamic Council in Dearborn, they have introduced counselors and psychologists in the mosques, and they are having great success with the people who are coming out seeking help. But it starts with us, right? It starts with us normalizing that conversation. I just don't want that peg
Absolutely,
to be lost.
I couldn't agree. I think this is a very, very important part. And I know I have been called, some friends know that I don't drink, and I've been called by some friends to help. And I have extended the help, and you can only do so much, and some have accepted and some haven't. But this is the bigger issue that Priya is drawing here is that our wives tend to cover their husbands drinking. The whole enabling, right? The wives are not approaching, the daughters are not approaching, and I think that's a big deal. I can say in my family, extended family, we have a lot of issues that stem from alcohol. And I think this is why this conversation is a great conversation. Because unless we systematically address it, it's gonna continue. I agree that doing this thing where you have a car full of drinks and inside is a function going on, this is not normal in other communities. But it's a normal in Punjabi community, wherever there is Khed Mela or any other place. And that's a serious issue, because if you get caught with, that tells you that we can't contain ourselves when it comes to alcohol. That's just, and I think by remaining silent, we are enabling it, right? By accepting it, I enable it. Just say.
And that's behind police station, and that's behind the Canton Public Library. That's the worst part of it.
Maybe we should bring those community or the people who are organizing those, bring them into the loop as well and discuss these things, right?
I'm from Canton.
Well, maybe you can solve that. Because I can't.
We've been to those villas and we see these environments. Not this year, I didn't attend this year. Last year, of course, right in the middle of this 8 o'clock at night, there's a fight going on, somebody being dragged out.
Right.
Is that what the whole culture is?
Yeah.
I think Priya hit a good point. The problem sometimes in the community is, and it could be in other communities too, people tend to forget. You drink 1 or 2 drinks to have a good time, maybe socializing. You don't drink to get drunk. When you start doing that, then it's, then you see parking lot full of people drinking all day long and tailgating and
I think it's important, before I pass it back to Priya to introduce our next speaker, is remember how I started, we are the government, right? But we're not here, or my intention is not here. That's my biggest concern, was to come in and say, hey, everyone here is a bunch of drunks. So I'm here to open those doors, just to be a small part of the solution. But the ball is going to be carried by this group. This group will carry the day and take it to the next step and where it needs to go, whether it's through meetings or leadership of the elders or everything above. Sir?
Yeah, Chief, marijuana being legalized, since last 2 years or whatever, how does law enforcement think about legalizing marijuana in our state? And
Okay,
We're
we
gonna
do
hold
want
that
to
question
keep it
because-
to the topic at hand.
So,
But you can ask the governor about her thoughts on legalizing it in this state. But we do want to keep this moving. Is there
Yes.
any other question pertaining to substance abuse or domestic violence? Because we do have other folks who can talk about it as well.
Yeah.
But anything for the chief, this is a very rare opportunity for our community.
I'm Bhupinder Singh. I'll talk in Punjabi, but I'll time to time do what I'm telling you.
Oh, thank you.
I was a heavy drinker, alcoholic, smoker, 106 cigarettes a day, with marijuana, all the time. I used to smoke 5 in the morning till late night. And not for 1 or 2 days, for 20 years. I was in boarding school in high school, and that's where I went the wrong way, It happens. And I got married, but at a very early age, मेरा ब्याह बड़ी छेती हो गई. And luckily I got a wife. She was from the village, in the city. And the only thing she knew about is my mom told her, and her mom told her. They know that these guys, we have no bonds, I go from house, I'm going to Chandigarh, I go to Ludhiana, other direction. I don't know where I'm going. When पता नहीं मैं किधर जा रहे हैं, I'm पुलिया पटका फिर वैसे. What happened? She started praying. Just after youngsters बोल रहे हैं, my son said, if he takes one drink, he'll hand over the keys to me. One beer. We go to restaurants, my understanding is in California. The restaurant, normally go out. One beer, he take that, you drive. And you start, go back. मेरी wife ने जी बहुत तपस्या की 10 साल, 10 years. I don't know what time I'm coming, 2 o'clock in the morning, I have 4 guys, friends with me. Oh, shout, abusing, it was very normal. My kids used to be scared. What's going on? It's very hard to tell in front of people. But the truth is, I can talk truth. I have that courage. Well, anyway, time went on. And when one day I told, okay, I want to drink. I was standing at Kharad near Chandigarh, and I waved to my friends. They were going on a motorcycle. And I waved, they started looking at us. You can't go drinking. So what we have to do then? They started, okay. Another thing, drink every day, cops, they always notice. Some देख रहे पुलिस वाले कि कौन घूम रहा है. Chandigarh 5 kg lifetime is crossing 20 sector 23. Watch cops watch every day. I'm driving motorcycle, 4 guys sitting behind me. 4 guys. 1 me and 3 other guys. I'm pulling out of the restaurant. There are 2 restaurants. We still have the bread. I'm talking 40 years back. 40 साल पुरानी बात है. Amar restaurant and Lahorian Hatti. When I was going to the barricades, the cop put the motorcycle right in front of me. Well, he told me, now I got you. I couldn't but part of it. Chaudhry Saab, he was a clean shave, we call him Chaudhry, he's from different city. Well, okay. But someone I'll pay you, I'll give you a ticket. Well, this is very useful to them, Okay, I'll finish it.
Yeah, so just.
Anyway, I quit drinking 30 years back. And I enjoy more than the drunken people in the parties. I'm the dancer, Doctors call me, look at this guy, he's drunk.
Vaheguru Ji
But
ka
I'm not
Khalsa,
drunk.
Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. This is such a good story.
And because such a
we
good
can listen
story.
to every part of your story.
Such a good story.
But
That's
it's
why I'm not
courage.
being let to tell more, because it's hard to listen.
Oh, Uncle has
Thank you for a few moments. Thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to. Thank you.
Can you put your hands together for the chief? Thank you for taking some time to talk with us. And thank you for sharing your story, because that's what we need, right? The more people who are willing to share their stories, it helps normalize the conversation. Speaking of that, I want to bring up Michael Segrist, who is a Canton Township clerk. He was first elected in 2016. He serves as the president of the Association of Wayne County Clerks, and he was also elected Township Clerk of the Year in 2021 by his peers in the elections community. He's also in recovery and is outspoken about his journey, and I think we could learn a little bit from hearing about Michael's story. So please put your hands together for Michael. Thank you.
Dance around with chairs here.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hello everybody, my name is Michael Segrist. I am the clerk in Canton Township. I am an elected official, and I have served in Canton Township for a number of years. Since the age of 24, I have been in elective office in Canton Township in one capacity or another. The reason Chief Baugh reached out to me a couple of days ago and asked me to talk today is he told me what he was going to be talking about and asked if I would join because I am not very private about my life in general, and definitely not private about my life prior to becoming an elected official. And I am in recovery. I have not had a drink of alcohol since January 26th of 2004, which is, thank you. I am, it's a weird thing to say because, I mean, I probably don't look that old. That's more than half my life, including my childhood. And somebody brought up youth and what do you do when, you know, somebody who's young is going down the wrong path in whatever capacity, and you know, how do you intervene? And that was definitely my story. But what's interesting is it didn't necessarily look like it would be that way. You know, my sister was like a mountain climber. She got accepted to the #1 school and the #1 business school, and was president of the business fraternity, and went on to get her master's and got a job in Chicago working for the #1 accounting firm, and so on and so forth. Everything she touched turned to gold. My other sister is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. Not as gifted as my oldest sister, but what she didn't have an ability she made up for in like sheer grit and determination. You were not going to stop her from achieving whatever you put in front of her. Now, both my parents, well educated. We owned a business. You know, they owned a business here in Plymouth. They were both CPAs, both presidents of the Chamber of Commerce in Plymouth. Very well known. My dad passed away in 2016. I remember there being almost about 800 to 900 people at his funeral. And that was the kind of man he was. When people thought of my dad or my mom, they thought of upstanding people who you would aspire to be like. So then how does somebody like me come out of the circumstances like that? That's a very complicated question. I don't necessarily know the answer to that. But what I do know is that from a young age, I was trying really, really hard to not feel different feelings. And I was different, and severely different. I've witnessed in other people when they drink, right? And we talked about it today. Drinking for some people can mean something very social. It ties people together. You can have a shared experience. It might allow some people to loosen up and have a good time. What I have noticed, what's different between me and other people, is they get to a point where they say, oh my gosh, this is starting to work. I better stop, or I better slow down. And what was different is I realized very quickly, oh, it's starting to work. I better keep going, and I better speed up, because I want more of this, and I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. And that was very unsustainable. And it was a Canton police officer who saved my life in a number of ways. One night, after a long history of legal consequences, and since I drank that way, it was not a source of connection with other people. It was a source of isolation. I drank in secret. I drank in private. I drank alone. And even if I was in a room full of people, I felt alone. My parents didn't talk about what was going on because they didn't want people to think bad about the family. But one night I was drinking and driving. I definitely had more than 1 or 2 beers, which is the standard answer that most alcoholics give when asked how much they've been drinking, which is ironic because if you've had 2, you remember 2. You don't. 1 or 2 is in and of itself an absurd statement to make. But I ran my vehicle into the side of a moving train that was going across the train tracks at Joy Road, in between Haggerty Road and Lilly, if you know that area. And surprisingly, I did not die. I had fully accepted that I would die, and I had been trying to stop drinking up until that point, and I was unable to do so on my own. And so I actually welcomed death when I realized I was going to hit that train. And I didn't. And I was going to try to lie my way out of whatever consequences would happen, because I already had a drinking and driving on my record from an earlier time. And I was going to try to figure out what story I would tell the people who still cared about me, even if they were forced to at that point, because we were related by blood. I was going to get a job I could walk to. I didn't have enough money for my next month's rent. And I was getting ready to start spinning these tales. And I stopped because I kind of realized that I couldn't do it anymore. I was tired. I had kind of welcomed death and it didn't come, and I was still here, and I didn't really know what to do. And so I called my dad, and my dad took me to the police department, and I still see the officer that was working on the desk that night. And he knew, because he had seen it time and time again. It's like if you get arrested for drinking and driving, odds are you've probably drank and drive a couple hundred times before you got pulled over, because that's kind of how statistics and math works. It's very rare that lightning strikes one person multiple times. He knew, and he said, "Michael, I'm not going to tell you you're an alcoholic, but I'm looking at your record and it seems like you meet the qualifications. But there are people who are able to go forward in life with what you've got and not drink. And I don't know how that works, but you need to find them and do something about this." And I did. And my life changed. And initially, I was very ashamed, still. Because that's kind of how we operate, It's how we operate as people. We come together in religious institutions and as a society, in clubs and organizations, professional societies, to seek connection, but we really only show a part of us sometimes to those folks that we think they're going to accept. And sometimes when people are struggling, we talk about them behind their backs. And so this is all the stuff that leads to guilt and shame that doesn't allow individuals a place to feel like they can be vulnerable. So part of the reason I'm open about my story is because I can lead with my vulnerability. And it's easier because, I've had some semblance of success. I got to finish my undergraduate degree and get a master's degree, become elected, and my community, for the most part, knows my story. So they've said, "Wow, you have this sordid past, and we accept you anyway." Well, some people don't, but usually that's because of partisan politics nowadays. It's but that there's no that there's nothing you can't kind of come back from and recover from, and I think that's an important thing, and it's important for us as a society to understand. Not everybody drinks because it's the Mela and it's one day and we're going to celebrate and this is fun and we're with our friends. Some people are slowly drinking when everybody goes to bed at night. Some people are drinking after the kids go to school. It's not always the men, it's the women too. And when we talk about the men drinking, then women have a different level of shame. And they don't want to necessarily come forward about that. And so I think what's important is this is it's an illness. It's definitely an illness, and it's hard too when you come from religious organizations that take pride in things like abstinence and chastity and things like that, and so it's seen as a moral failing. Or, my God, after the second or third time, wouldn't you learn? You must be intellectually inferior. And I may be immoral, I may be an idiot, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case, for me anyway, because there's no limit to what I've been able to achieve and what I've seen people be able to achieve when they kind of understand that this illness doesn't discriminate against anybody based on anything in particular. So I think that's my couple of cents. And it was funny, so I still go to AA meetings, which this is being broadcast, but I'm not supposed to talk about that. Yesterday I was at an AA meeting in Plymouth, and somebody brought up Judge Plakis' name because they had a DUI. And this person has really turned their life around, and they've had a number of years of sobriety. And they're talking about that experience, and they joked, but I believe them, that getting a drinking and driving was the best $10,000 they ever spent, because it changed their life. They had to go so far low that they could change. And I don't think they would trade their life today for anything that they had before that DUI. So no matter how deep or how dark it looks, sometimes that's how dark it has to be before the dawn comes. So there you go.
We have a question.
If you will be willing to share, is there something that helped you the most when you were trying to quit? AA, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, books. Is there something that stands out?
This is hard. I will tell you this, and this is the hardest part about it, especially if you love somebody and you're watching them routinely make the same mistake over and over again. And I would ascribe this to both domestic violence and to alcoholism or addiction. When you see somebody who looks like they can't break a cycle, even though maybe at certain times they pass a lie detector test, like, I'm not going to do it again, I'm going to change, this is going to be different, everything's going to be different. It's really hard, because no matter how much you want it for somebody else, they have to kind of want it for themselves. They have to, I had to be broken. I had to be essentially suicidal and say, if I'm going to take my own life if this doesn't work, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I don't know anything. I've got no ego. I'm no longer going to do this, which is help me, but only so much. You can only help me so much. I won't let you. Once I was broken enough that dropped, I don't know that there's any tip, I really don't. But don't give up on people, right? I do believe prayer works. I do believe it's really important, to be quite honest. I had to find a spiritual solution. I don't envy people who don't have some semblance of spirituality in their life, because to me, I started focusing on the daily stuff of working a recovery, but I put the outcomes in God's hand and did for me what I could not do for myself. So, yeah.
And just to piggyback real quick, sometimes I feel like in our culture we put a lot of pressure, to have another drink, or why aren't you drinking? I will be honest with you, I quit drinking alcohol 2.5 years ago. My white friends supported me almost from day one, and it was the Punjabis who gave me the hardest time. It was the brown kids who made me feel like I was weird or I was different because I wasn't drinking. So yes, I 100% agree. This is a journey that happens from within. You have to want something and realize that you are not in control, and turn your life over to a higher power if that is your journey. But I do think that peer pressure, I think this idea of I'm tough, I'm Punjabi, we have to start changing that at the root. Otherwise, I hang out with brown people less because I feel more accepted by white people because I don't drink. That tells you something about our community, and I want more Indian connection, but I have noticed that. Okay, real quick, I know the Lions are playing and we all want to get out of here. Our final guest for this morning, and again, we're so grateful that he's here today, is Judge Jim Plakis with the 35th District Court. He's worked as both a former prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, which puts him in a very unique position. And for 16 years, he's been a local district court judge. And he was also a member of the advisory board for FACE Addiction, which formerly was called Families Against Narcotics. So he's uniquely positioned to see from a judicial standpoint the ravages of getting DUIs and domestic violence, but he can also talk about how we can work together to address some of these issues that continue to plague our community. So please put your hands together for Judge Plakis.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. My head is spinning right now because really, to speak with you for just a couple minutes about addiction and what I see all day long is absolutely impossible. So the sad thing is, I have a job. I put food on my table because people have problems. That's a fact. And nobody's coming to see me because they're having a good day. That's a fact. But we're there because this is real life. All right? And life can just be absolutely ugly and an incredible struggle. But that's what it is. And you come together as a community right here to help one another, and that's what the most important thing is. I'm not here because of your specific community. I'm here because I can relate to you in that I'm Greek. All right? And Greeks always have other Greeks' backs. I'd knock on their doors when I was running for judge, and they'd say, you don't have to say a word, just keep walking, take your literature, I'm voting for you. Well, it's kind of scary, but okay. I didn't say don't, but, so you have an incredible foundation and base to work from, because you guys have one another's backs. You love each other, you care about each other. And the work you've put into preserving your community, I have all the respect in the world for that. So I'm not here because of your community, I'm here because I'm telling you this is what I see all day long. It touches everybody. I don't believe most people choose addiction. Oftentimes it's something you're born with. And if you watch people go through it, you would agree with me. People don't choose this. It's not an easy road. But it's been said a couple times up here, you have to want to do this and you have to want to do that. Now, when I went to the Families Against Narcotics meetings, which they've now changed to Face Addiction Now, they wanted judges to go there and participate and be educated by people who have addiction issues and share with them, our perspective on things once you're on the bench. And I would tell them that, I keep telling people who are in front of me, okay, so you got a drunk driving case, you're gonna have to go and get, you're gonna be tested once a week, you're gonna blow into this device, you're gonna have to go to therapy for whatever the issue may be, maybe do some community service. But at the end of the day, if you want to change your life, you're gonna have to want to. And they kept telling me, stop saying want. Now, these people on this board were recovering addicts. And they all said, none of us wanted to stop drinking or smoking or doing drugs. The question is, are you willing to do it? That's the big difference. So the willing becomes wanting once you've had the experience and you've become educated and you have your support and you've picked up these tools that get you to the point where you want to change your life and your habits. So our court is the 35th District Court. We serve both Plymouths, both Northvilles, and Canton. District courts are commonly referred to as the People's Court because we're not dealing with, all cases start at our court, at our level, but it's the felony cases that end up downtown at the big court you always see on TV, Wayne County Circuit Court. We're the People's Court because we're dealing with people who are having daily problems. They just started drinking. They, because of stress or whatever, they're starting to act out in anger, and now they're becoming physical with other people. It's the People's Court. And here's the thing. People are people. I don't care who you are, you have an addiction of some kind. And if you only have one, you're incredibly blessed, because we all have multiple addictions. And it doesn't have to be to just drugs or to alcohol. It can be to sugar. That's me. It can be to shopping. That's me. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is what it being a human is, imperfection and helping one another. And in a situation like Michael's, where you take that perceived imperfection and your flaws or whatever, and you spin it into something positive, and now he's helping so many people. That's the difference. So I tell people who come in front of me all the time, I always say this, that this could be the greatest thing that ever happened to you. Being charged with the domestic violence, being pulled over because of a drunk driving, whatever it may have been. Because you have this opportunity right now to see things differently and change your life. And you know what? When you change your specific life, it affects your immediate family. And then it affects the external family. And then from there, it affects your friends, which affects the community. It's like my dad used to say, it all spider webs. It becomes a big spider web of positivity. So there's no shame in any of this. It's just real life stuff. But it's about loving yourself. At the end of the day, you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself and be willing to make a change that is necessary. You know, I feel like I really should just be taking questions from you guys, if you have questions from me based upon my experience. Because again, I could go on forever about this stuff. Yes?
Yeah. So what we're finding in our community is that, you know, our community tends to be therapy averse, and one of the issues is culturally competent therapy, you know, people who understand our culture. So I'm wondering about things like Alcohol Anonymous or the narcotics group you were talking about. Are there spaces that, you know, where like language resources might be people who could speak Punjabi, or would there be, again, people who understand the culture? Or is there training available for people who want to become leaders in an organization, or like run a group like that where they could? Because I think one of the things that will really move the needle is to have culturally competent resources available, or culturally humble resources available for people seeking that. I think, and I mean this with like complete due respect, but when you come from like a Christian background and you're trying to tell people of, you know, there's a real power dynamic issue, you know, when like white people are trying to tell you what to do as far as fix your community. And I think that helping us help our community would be like so beneficial to us, because
I will say the AA program though talks about a higher power of your understanding. So it is
it's kind of Christian based.
No, I would disagree.
No?
I've gone to the meetings, and I'll tell you that when I'm there, I think of Vigru. It is your understanding.
Okay.
And I will also say that a lot of times people have had very challenging first introductions to their religious, you know, entity.
Yeah.
And I didn't. Loved going to the Gurdwara. Still found myself in that room. So I think that there are some misconceptions, but I totally understand what you're saying.
Even just language.
Yes,
right?
100%,
Right, yeah.
100%. But it very much is a higher power of your understanding, and that creates a much more personal connection. But I yes, 100% agree. Like a language thing, that plays a role, right? Because we can reach new audiences if we can speak the language.
Yeah, and I think that why we drink is maybe different, like culturally, right? Like you were talking about the pressure, and we've seen how the Punjabi parties are, you know, and just like the whole setup, right? And the gender dynamic in our community, and the whole thing, right? There's so much going on that I think
A lot of layers.
A lot of layers.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's about finding something you connect with, something that connects with you. I have a lot of people come in front of me, and I'll see the recommendation from the probation department is go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they'll say, I can't do that. I've done it before. It doesn't work for me, and that's fine. It doesn't have to work for you. Again, we're all different, but we all share common problems. And there's a lot of resources out there and alternatives to finding your path to recovery and to peace and to being in a good place. So at the end of the day, it's just like so many other things. It's about being inquisitive and asking and being determined. And you know, our court can be a tool for anyone here, anybody. You don't have to just be a Plymouth, Norfolk, Canton resident either. We have a probation department. They're trained. They know what's out there, and it's not just limited to our community. They can help direct people. And if you're willing to participate and get that help, it can change your life and others.
I just want to point out something. I know we talked a lot about AA and people, alcoholics, but I just want to mention Al-Anon, which is a resource for the families, for alcoholics, because a lot of time the alcoholic and the family may not be ready, but because the family is dealing with so much, it is a resource for the families. And just to be open, it's conducted in a church, but it has nothing to do with religion. So that's also an important resource for people to know about and reach out.
Great point, absolutely. It's a holistic, everybody's affected, right? As the chief was saying, one person, it's a ripple effect. Al-Anon is an excellent resource.
I've been to Al-Anon meetings. So again, it's because you, as an individual dealing with someone who may have an addiction, you're frustrated because you keep trying to help them and you don't understand. You can't relate to why can't they accept that help? Why won't they change and do their thing? And there are instances where family members, they will cut the line and they'll say, I can't help you anymore. We can't do this any longer. And I have young people who come in front of me all the time, and I'll ask where they live, and they'll tell me they're living with friends, and I ask, why aren't you living with your parents? And they're telling me that they were kicked out, and then it just engages we end up in a long conversation about, well, how did we get to the point where your parents kicked you out? Because it's really hard for a parent to kick their kid out of the house. So everyone has a history, and it impacts and affects all of us. So there's an example of communication and getting to the root of problems.
Okay, I have suggestion. Say I have a group of people, golfers. We meet twice a week, and after the game, we have a drink. Now, if you ask individually, we don't have a drinking problem. But then you go details of their families. They are in denial mode, and that's what we should be talking about in a group. I would say, I don't have a drinking problem, but you do have it. That kind of thing.
That's a tough one.
So that's this is one of my solutions. Among the friends, we can talk.
Yes.
I can talk about my father, grandfathers, and uncles. What did they do? Who had the problem? Who did not have the problem? So this is a very good discussion point, and we should talk, because nobody will say on his own, "Oh, I have a drinking problem." No, but somebody else may say, "I guess you have a problem." Somebody says, "I take 1 drink a day." Somebody says, "Oh, I take 3 drinks a day." And the 3 drinks became from 1 to 3 to 6, and then. So this is my suggestion. A group of your friends, you can talk about it.
That's amazing. Yes, that's how we have change. It starts in that friend group, right? It starts with conversations. I think one more, and I think we're.
Thank you. I think as a community, we've made drinking cool.
Yep.
We just need to make it uncool.
Yeah. And let's go. Any final? Okay, one more. Yes.
No, just a conclusion. First of all, I want to thank you and all the guests who came together to address this issue. But the main thing that comes out of all of this is looking at our background from where we come. We don't look at all these officials who are sitting here the same way as they're out here back home. They're more like an adversarial relationship. So we want to keep as far away from those conditions. And that's what's different. When we come here, we don't realize that. And I think these kind of events help us do that.
Yes.
That there are resources, they're there to help us, and that's what we should propagate within our community.
Yes.
To tell our people that, look, it's not, should not be a stigma that if I have to go and ask for help from an official. So I want to thank you for doing that, and I think amongst ourselves, we should propagate this within our community to all the people. And last suggestion, what he suggested, talk to our friends,
100%.
family, and encourage them to accept it and face the problem.
And it starts with us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not the youngest people that come to the Gurdwara, right? But we can lead by example, so that younger kids can see what we're doing. How are we choosing to live our life? I've had conversations with Uncle. He's inspired me. That's what we need. When I hear his story and I realize, oh my God, it's 30 years he hasn't had a drink, that makes somebody with 2.5 years feel like that's the goal, right? But if I don't have that conversation, then I don't know that example is right here in my community. It's so much more powerful to see Sardar, Turban, Beer talking to me about that. It's very impactful, and it starts with us. And finally, I'd like to bring Jaspreet Paji up. And again, I want to thank all of our guests for being here today.
So first of all, thank you to our elected officials, and really appreciate the fact, like Sukhpal Bhai said, that this is not what we're used to in coming from India. So this is really refreshing, and I think for you all, as I've been writing in many of you are tired of getting texts from me. One conversation that lands at the right place can change a life. One person who can get help will have a life changed. I know a lady, she calls me Veer. She's in Toronto area. She's 46, 47 years old. You know what she told me? She said, Veer, my father is an alcoholic, my mother is an alcoholic, and I'm 2 years sober, and I am trying to change the destiny of my family. This issue is genetic. That's why we judge. The guy I work with, I work out with this guy, he's 20 years sober, recovered alcoholic, and he often tells me, he said, you were born with this. I was born with this. In the right set of circumstances, you know, and again, we can do all the things in our careers, we can progress, etc. But if I don't recognize that my family has all these issues, what's the point? The resources are available. I think it's so important that we all come together to put our hands. The uncle ne kya, right? Prayer has worked 30 years, right? And uncle, I'm gonna properly listen to your story. I was not trying to cut you off. So,
you have to listen.
Yeah, I have got to sit down with you and understand every part, because you should be standing here and speaking. We'll be doing this.
We should do it again.
We should do it.
We should do it
We
again.
should do it. And you'll be our main speaker that day, because it is so important. And thanks for having the courage to come forward.
How to get out of this, you have to talk to somebody.
Yes.
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 And the best person you want to talk is he.
Yes. Vaheguru.
Then
That's a great
we
way to
do
end.
it. Every Sunday we sit with him and talk to him.
Yes. Yes.
We should end on that note.
So, and I also wanted to thank Dr. Haminder and Raman Panji. Let's give them a round of applause. So, last week, they did a topic, I think a lot of you were here, on stress management and anxiety. Very, very, very good. And Raman Panji actually, obviously Dr. Haminder brought a lot of, psychiatrist perspective, but she did a nice job connecting it with prayer. Uncle, you said prayer. Prayer works, right? That's why we're studying in Gurdwara. And in January, we are going to be doing spirituality through Simran. And it's not my program, it's not Priya's program, or it's not Sharon's program, it's our program. Our community, wonderful, high-achieving community, runs away from these conversations. It's not normal. We only highlight to mera munda hai kar raha, meri kudiya kar rahi hai, main achieve kar liya, main wo kar liya. We don't say, yaar mainu ye problem chal rahi hai. People will, tell you off or whatever, or we are afraid of being judged. So I think the idea is the more we destigmatize these conversations, this whole well-being initiative is all that it is. It's not, I thought about bringing this team together. It's if you own it, it will go far. If you don't, it won't. And I think the need in our community is so big. So I urge you, if you're leaving here, talk to 5 people about it. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
That's good. Priya, great job.
Thank you.
You guys ready to go to the Lions game?
Yeah, something else. Yeah, something else, my God.
I saw your face. It's like,
This is so cool.
I'm telling you, I've never had this since tennis court. I still feel
You're looking wonderful, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good job, Priya.
Thank you, Chief. You're absolutely right.
We should get one picture with the chief with these.
They're afraid to face life without alcohol.
Thank you so much.
It's getting on the path. So I see them there. We we have to see them at least 48 hours after they're arrested, tell them that
psychology.
And that's the next days.
I
What's that? No. Yeah, I know what it is. I love that.
Oh, did you really? At this point, I had people who were struggling with this problem.
Yes. I mean, I think it's just sort of,
The council then
There's not any. I think the Indian was, there's still some protections.
I didn't go to the wedding. That wasn't a reason. Yeah, the big
the will to want is so profound, and you have to build that space for struggle and have to your own buildings, that's the part we're so
to me, it was very
so we have to shut this. How do you shut this?